from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, we're going to be talking about the mayoral election in Indianapolis, and boy, it is really heating up between current Mayor Joe Hogsett and his challenger, Jefferson Shreve, on the Republican side, and we're going to be talking about that today with Joe Garrison, who is one of the co-founders of the North Shadeland Alliance on the north side of Indianapolis, who is also a friend of mine who I walked with for over a year on Tuesday night in the Lake Castleton apartment. So stay tuned. Welcome. This is Reverend Harrison with Real Talk, and I want to welcome you today to this show. And we want to talk today about this mayor's race in Indianapolis between incumbent Mayor Joe Hogsett and his challenger, Republican Jefferson Shreve. And I have a friend with me in the studio today that we became friends several years ago in the partnership between Indy 10 Point and the North Shadeland Alliance, and we used to do every Tuesday walks in the Lake Castleton apartment, and I don't know how many problems we solved, but we certainly talked about almost every issue under the sun in our walks on Tuesday. And that is my friend Joe Garrison, who is one of the co-founders of the North Shadeland Alliance. And Joe, welcome today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, listen, when I want to get a viewpoint on particularly how independent voters, maybe, suburban voters are thinking about an issue, I always call you up.
I'll try to represent well then.
You try to represent. Well, let's talk a little bit about the mayor's race and what's been the hot issue is certainly Jefferson Shreve's crime prevention plan, and I don't think most people heard probably 90% of it. They're just focused on his gun control plan that really seems similar to Mayor Hogsett's plan, and the conservatives went wild. They went wild. Some good friends of mine, Hammer and Nigel, didn't like it, and Kendall didn't like it, and they pretty much been beating Shreves up about it. And the gun guy, I mean, all of them, I've been listening to them. So, I'm wondering, is his campaign dead in the waters now? What do you think? What are you hearing? Was it a smart move on his part to basically, say the same thing about his gun control plan that, Hogsett did?
Yeah, is his campaign dead in the water, and was that a smart move to put out his gun control policy? Probably two different questions.
Yes.
Dead in the water, I don't know. This is a Democratic city, and he's a Republican candidate. I think it was a smart move on his part, on his campaign's part, to take a more moderate approach to gun control and some of his public safety stuff, because you have, 60-some% of the city is Democrats. So even if he polls full 100% of Republicans, he's still getting smashed. So he's got to pull in moderates, independents, center-left Democrats if he wants to have any chance of governing. And as they say, you can't govern if you don't win.
So what do you think about the proposal, raising the age of those who can purchase a gun from 18 to 21, is for some controversy, requiring again for individuals who purchase a gun to have a permit, and the banning of what they call assault weapons.
Yeah, personally, I love it. I think some of the things that he put out in regards to those things line up with what I personally would like to see. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I kind of float the middle in there somewhere, depending on the issue. So that means everybody hates me.
Right.
But I like it. I mean, I think, a lot of those things are things that obviously Democrats have wanted, but also I think moderate Republicans to some extent. either want those things or are going to be okay with them if it means he can pull a larger voting base. I don't know how he gets a lot of it done.
Okay.
A lot of it, I think, relies on the state, and we saw Hogsett kind of do this recently with, the city council pushing for some different, changes to gun law in Indianapolis. But it's like, well, if and when the state lets them do that.
Right.
So I don't know how this is really any different to some extent. Like, can he do those things? I'm not a law expert by any means.
Right.
But that's my biggest question on it. I like the ideas, especially with, some of the stuff relating to gun policy. I line up with a lot of that. I think it's a good idea.
I think part of the criticism and what I've been hearing is that neither Hogsett or Shreve's proposal has any chance in the state legislature to pass, and I think that's what some people that I've heard from, why propose it when it's not going to really happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it's advocating for it. So sure, throw it out there, whether you're Hogsett or Shreve, they're, kind of two sides of the same coin on this issue. I think, put it out there and start building maybe a grassroots swell around it if you can. I don't know if that'll happen. I think there's some value in getting it out there in public discourse and getting folks like you and radio shows and all that kind of stuff talking about it. And I don't know. I agree. I don't think it's ever going to happen necessarily, but you got to start somewhere, right?
So what persuades you as a voter who's kind of an independent suburban voter to choose one candidate over the other if their plans are similar? What becomes the deciding factor in making a choice if they both basically have the same gun plan when it comes to gun control in the city of Indianapolis?
I'd like to hear more about how they plan to get it done.
Okay.
I don't know that the gun plan for either one of them, the public safety plans for either one of them are going to sway me because I don't know how much of it's actually playing in real life.
Okay.
So I think specifically swaying on votes, it would be probably other things, as a whole, looking at those, at their policies. I see that Shreve has thrown some other stuff on his website recently, which is great. It was only public safety for a while, but I don't know that there's enough difference in the gun policy or reality to it.
Okay. Yeah. I was wondering, about that when it comes, really to that, issue. I think for what I'm also hearing from a lot of voters, Joe, is that the gun policy from both Hogsett and Shreve really doesn't address what the real problem is, and the real problem is those who are unlawfully possessing those guns, who tend to be the suspects in a lot of the violent crime that neither one of the mayoral candidates are really addressing that. That's kind of, what people are saying that's really driving the violence. Another new law is not going to stop, someone who is already unlawfully getting a gun from getting a gun in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to agree with that. You can change the law from 18 to 21 and not necessarily opposed to that, but you and I both know 12 and 14-year-olds are carrying guns in the streets,
yes.
and that law is not going to change that.
Right.
My question is, how does he plan to enforce it?
Okay.
So, you can change the law all you want, but we have all kinds of, these laws that we can't enforce at the moment, or we're not enforcing, or we don't have enough police to enforce, whatever that is. I don't think that law is going to affect those 12 and 14-year-olds with a gun in their pants right now. So
is that a big issue? I think I seen this morning where at North Central High School, one of the students was arrested for possessing a gun. For suburban voters, is there much talk about, the fact that more kids are bringing guns to the school? And what is people's remedy or solution to that you're hearing?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a concern. I mean, I have kids in public schools. It's a concern for me. It's difficult because there's not a ton the school can do about it. Recently at one of my kids' schools, a parent stored a gun in the kid's backpack momentarily. I'm using air quotes.
Right.
And forgot, and the kid took it to school. like as a school, how do you do that? As a law enforcement, how do you prevent that kind of stuff?
Right.
You really can't.
Right.
Obviously we want our schools to be safer and that kind of stuff. And we're all concerned over what we've seen over the last really couple decades as far as violence in schools and kids carrying all manner of weapon to school. The question is, how do you police that? How do you prevent it? I don't know that I've seen anything in the plans that will do that. I think Shreve's plan talks about, engaging more with the schools and, the police working more with the schools. Hopefully that'll come up with stuff, but I know the schools are working hard on that. It's just some stuff you can't prevent.
That is true. I think, when you begin to talk about that issue for schools, when I would say where my kids go to school at, which is a concern I have as a parent, there are so many young people today who are carrying guns, particularly in the urban core. How do we really address that as the larger society, that tends to impact, what happens to in schools. And probably that's really my concern when it comes to both what Hogsett proposed and Shreve's. I don't think it really addresses what the real issue is. And I'm not for sure how we really deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think there's stuff in here about, recurring violent offenders and things like that. I think, in my opinion, you have a lot of people, especially in the urban core, who's, dad's in jail, mom's in jail, things like that.
Right.
Maybe they should be or maybe they shouldn't be. We talk a lot about, the revolving door or whatever. Is that, I think, what voters worry about, what I am concerned about. I think definitely what I heard in the last election where we had a prosecutor up for re-election was, what does that look like? Who are we putting back in jail? Who are we keeping in jail after they, get out and reoffend? What do those look like? And I think some of those things, hey, if my dad and mom both go away for selling a little bit of drugs, I'm now on my own to deal with stuff. We deal with poverty, we deal with, parents in jail, we deal with all those kind of things. There's a lot of stuff going on there that I think creates a lot of that. But, it's in the plan, talk about the other, factors that go along with, creating these issues. I don't see a lot of plans to actually deal with it.
Deal particularly with, I think there are two issues that I think we're grappling with and struggling with. One is the nonviolent offenders, who the parents may get arrested for selling drugs. What do we do with those parents who have children? Yeah. And then we had a situation several weeks ago where we had an 18-year-old who was arrested for carjacking with a gun. He was sentenced to home detention. He ended up cutting off the ankle bracelet. And in a deal where a gun was going to be purchased, he ended up shooting and killing someone. Yeah. I think he was 19, so I think it was two 18-year-olds involved and a 19-year-old, and the 19-year-old gets killed. And I think as we try to evaluate both Hogsett and Shreve's plan, how do we deal with that piece of it, where there's frustration about the court system when it comes to the repeat violent offenders, and are we doing anything to rehabilitate, to provide a support, system or network for those individuals so they don't keep reoffending or escalate the level of violence that leads to someone being shot or injured or shot or killed?
Yeah, I think candidates have to be so much more clear on what they mean when they use these terms, recurring violent offender, nonviolent crimes, those kind of things. I think what I heard a lot in the last fall election with the prosecutor's race, I think carries over to this race. Okay. In that people would look at Cindy Carrasco, the Republican, and she was obviously very hard on recurring violent offenders, but the language that she used was not clear enough on, well, what do you mean by that? And, a lot of people were like, she's just going to lock up a bunch of potheads, and that's a concern for people. Like, we don't want to, people with minor drug possession, those kind of things. Like, let's rehabilitate them, help them, get them some help, and then get them back to their kids. Right. So that those kids don't then follow that same path. obviously, everyone across the board, if someone's recurring violent offender and legitimately a danger to society, I don't think there's a political spectrum out there that doesn't say, let's keep those people away from others. But I think the politicians have to be more clear on what do you mean by that? Where's the line of offenses, and how do you plan to deal with those nonviolent versus recurring violent offenders? On both sides, I think they need to be clearer on that.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with you concerning, Cindy versus Ryan Mears, and there was some concern. And I remember walking with someone one night with 10 Point, and they were, talking about, well, I don't want to vote for someone who's going to lock someone up for smoking pot,
yeah.
And that was basically their impression of what Cindy was going to do, And I was wondering with Jefferson Shreve, and maybe the reason he decided to go down that path was he trying to shed the quote-unquote image of Republicans that they're harder on crime, and that as the mayor, he was going to push more toward locking people up than really addressing the issue of gun violence. Because gun violence, and what needs to be done about it for some, particularly in Democratic circles, is an important issue. So if you're gonna win them over, many of them believe in gun control.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to win even moderate Democrats, you're going to have the gun policy probably that Shreve put out. They're going to have to start talking about abortion, those hot topic issues that are polarizing. The middle is not as polarized as,
right.
As the far end. So being able to put forth policies there that I think bring those people together, but really just clarity of message on those has left a lot to be desired. The last couple elections, including this one, probably. Well,
so what are you hearing as what should be the top issues beside gun violence? What are people talking about? What are some of the real issues that people want these two mayoral candidates to really address? Have you heard anything? Or as you think about yourself, what are important issues that the candidates should be talking about?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the issues that we talk about a lot of time, I think people want to talk about, gun violence. People want to talk about topics of abortion, but also, the economy. How are we doing locally? Okay. Are we building the local economy? Are we helping businesses, but particularly smaller businesses? I know myself, I'm a business owner myself.
Okay.
It's been a tough year.
Okay.
For the first time in a long time, I've had a tough year. So looking at, what can they do as governmental leadership in the city to kind of spur on that growth of small businesses. We look at the North Shadeland area. We've had several small businesses close, restaurants that have been around for decades. A restaurant that's been around for 2 years that was very popular closed out of nowhere. So looking at what can we do to help the entire city with that. I know our corner, because we are financially better off maybe than other areas of the city, get a little overlooked.
Okay.
And those kind of things. And I think that's an issue too, especially for the outer areas of Indianapolis. Like, we kind of don't feel seen sometimes because we don't have the gun violence that is, in the urban core. We don't have the poverty levels that are in different parts of the city. But along Shadeland, we're seeing businesses have closed, and it's hard to get new businesses in, and that impacts the neighborhoods around there. And people are looking around going, hey, what do we do about this? And I think people want to see answers from the, mayor, the governor, the, the city council, all of our elected officials. Hey, what are we doing about the entire city? I don't think our issues are as bad as other places, but that doesn't mean they don't hurt.
Well, yeah, and the whole issue. So is the economy driving what you see when it comes to, businesses close, or do people have less money to spend? Are those the things that are kind of driving it? I was listening yesterday, and they was talking about the number of people that have maxed their credit cards and used their credit cards, and during these very tough times when food prices are higher and gas prices high again. Is the economy really driving that? And what can the mayor do?
Yeah, that's an even better question. Yeah, I mean, I think the economy is driving some of that stuff across the board. It's not just us either. I have friends in marketing all over the country, and we were having a conversation in our Slack channel online the other day. All of us going, "Man, it's been a tough year."
Okay,
so it's not just Indianapolis. It's the country. It's maybe beyond that. I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I think just doing things that incentivize businesses. I don't mean just like tax cuts and things like that. Like positioning the city as the place to be, the place to work. Some of it is accurate and real right now. We just need to do a better job positioning that. I saw an IBJ the other day. It was, I totally forgot his name, and I know him. The guy that owned Exact Target and sold it to Salesforce. Was talking about how great this city is for the tech field and starting new businesses and stuff like that. I think that's true. I think it's just sometimes the perception of it not being great because we're, in India no place or whatever that might be, or the political back and forth of Republicans are trying to get elected right now, so they're smashing the heck out of Indianapolis, trying to make it look really bad so they can get elected. Sometimes I think we go overboard, and I expect if Shreve gets elected, the Democrats will probably be doing the same thing next year.
Yeah.
So that's not a bash on Republicans necessarily. That's just that's a bash on the the way of business.
The way of business.
So I think the narratives get us down. I've been talking to people like, are we really heading into a recession, or are we just scaring ourselves into not spending as much money so that then that expands and then, it turns out I don't have enough money now because other people are not spending the money because the news, the politicians, the political pundits are, scaring the pants off us to, hey, lock it down. I think there's part of that too. So a lot of it can be messaging. I'm sure I'm not a financial wizard, so I don't know that, the incentives, I don't necessarily think that you have to, cut every single tax in the city to incentivize business or give tax breaks to these big businesses. But, I think there's things that we can do across the board to make it more appealing or let people know how appealing it actually really is to run a business here.
Do politicians throw out these hot button issues like abortion? It was, I remember hearing it in the prosecutor's race, but in the mayor's race, I'm wondering, well, what can the mayor really do about it? I mean, he supports it, people, for women to have the right to get an abortion, but by law, what can the mayor really do? And is that throwing out a issue to try to appeal to certain voters that may vote on that issue? But it's kind of like the gun issue for both candidates. They really can't do anything about it, but they're throwing it out there. And the same thing with abortion. That's more of a state legislator's issue than a mayor's issue, I would think.
Oh yeah, it definitely is, but not everybody understands that. So if you're a politician, you throw out the grenades and blow stuff up, and I'm going to change all this gun stuff, or I'm in favor, or I'm against abortion. Well, it turns out you can't actually do what you're saying you're going to do. Right. But not every voter is going to understand that. So you're going to pull people that way, but also just letting people know I'm on your side. And positioning the other candidate as the villain is a very effective way to pull votes.
Mm-hmm. So what about the issue? Just a couple more. Infrastructure, is that an issue in kind of the suburban parts of the city when it comes to infrastructure? And then the whole issue of education, because that is always a hot button issue, particularly in the urban core.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's, I can speak to our area. So during the primaries, I talked to a very, very conservative Republican that is pissed off about potholes. And said, if Shackelford gets the nomination, I will vote for her.
Wow.
Because she went hard on potholes and things like the infrastructure. And our streets are kind of falling apart. We see those issues all over the city, urban core all the way out to the edges. And people are tired of blowing tires. And so I just looked at him. I was like, "Are you for real? That's the issue that you're gonna swing on?" Yeah, I'm tired. I've blown 3 tires this year already. And I was like, "Wow, okay, that's great." So I think obviously infrastructure, things like that, putting forth those plans and letting people know what you're going to do. People want the roads to be better and they want our bridges to get fixed. Now, on the flip side, we have a clear path and all these other things happening right now. I can't get anywhere. So everyone is complaining about it a ton right now. But once it's all done, obviously it's better. So
well, that is true. And I'm probably with that guy because I probably average 3 to 4 tires a year that I blow. Really?
I think you missed one of our walks because you blew a tire.
Yeah, I did. I did, and through potholes, and particularly at nighttime.
Yeah.
I went through, I didn't know it was a deep pothole. I just seen the water there, and when I went in, I didn't come out with a good tire.
There's some potholes around here that'll take your soul away.
Yeah, that's true. So pothole. What about education?
Yeah, obviously that's another, I think, big issue. So I come from both of us, Christian background, ministry background. I got a degree from Taylor University. I know a lot of people that are very conservative in that realm. And there's a big push to, homeschool your kids, private school your kids. The public schools are, hurting our children. But at the same time, my wife's a public educator. And so we know the schools don't have the resources they need, even though some people are overspending on schools. Teachers are down. People don't want to be teachers anymore. They're leaving at a crazy rate. Same thing as police officers. Anything in the service industry where you have to deal with one-to-one with human beings.
Ministry too, believe me. Yeah.
A lot of pastors are just hanging it up, going, I'm going private sector.
Yes,
I'm out of here. Yeah. Any industry where you have to deal with people one-on-one or one-to-many, we've just treated each other so poorly over the last several years through COVID, through politics, through all of this, that teachers are leaving. We're not paying them enough in the first place, and it's definitely not enough to deal with what they have to deal with. I know up in Carmel, they were the people were doxing teachers, and one teacher was outed for having a gay kid, and they said, you're not capable of teaching my children because your child is gay. So we have those kind of things happening, and it's beyond money. It's money, but it's beyond money. It's resources. Teachers spending so much money on their own on their classrooms because the schools don't have the money to give teachers the resources they need. There's just so much there. I don't know how the mayor handles that kind of stuff.
Right.
But we just have these polar opposite sides that are not willing to even talk. One side's homeschool your kids or you're a bad parent. The other side is I want to send my kids to public school because I believe in it, but it's under-resourced and all the teachers are leaving.
Wow.
It's tough.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. One final question, Joe. Can a Republican mayor win in Marion County where there is 60+% Democrats?
I think if a Republican wins, they might make a movie about it.
Really?
It just doesn't seem likely to me.
Okay,
Hogsett's got so much money. He's so, he's popular among the Democrats, and there's just so many more Democrats than there are Republicans. We'll see. It's happened, it can happen. So far I don't see it, but
so then are people voting on, so then do people vote basically on party lines rather than what the real issues are? Really?
I think most of the time, yeah.
Okay.
There's not a lot of us that sit there and go, I'll take a Democrat here and a Republican there, and a libertarian over here and an independent. It's like picking off the McDonald's menu for someone like me, but everyone else is just going off a number one.
Yeah. 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 That's true. I think the last Republican mayor was Mayor Ballard.
Ballard, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I wonder how he would do today.
I actually have asked some people about that were big Ballard fans, and they don't think he'd have a chance.
Yeah, the numbers.
That's what Shreve's dealing with. The far right's eating him alive. Go look at the tweet replies to when he launched his public safety plan.
I know.
Hundreds of them just destroying him. But it's not enough to pull Democrats, I don't think. So it's just now you're working with a third of the electorate.
But what do I guess I don't really understand the Republicans. How can you win if the numbers are so swayed in the other direction that you don't try to meet people in the middle? I don't understand Republicans in Marion County or in Indianapolis that are advocating for Shreves to be a traditional Republican and win.
Yeah, no, you can't govern if you can't win.
Yes.
And that's, I agree with you. that's why I tweeted, I think this was at least the right move. I don't know that it helps, but putting out a more moderate safety plan that focuses more on, pulling back some of those, further right gun laws is the right thing to do. I think his base is going to eat him alive on it, and people are just not willing to think of the other side as good human beings, I think, at this point sometimes, and that's unfortunate.
Well, that is true. That is true. Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining me again today, and certainly we'll get you back soon. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more real talk about the real issues that affect our communities here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to follow and subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much for joining me today and my guest, Joe Garrison, as we talked about this crazy mayoral race in Indianapolis between Mayor Joe Hogsett and Jefferson Shreve. I pray today that you have a blessed and you have an awesome day. Until we meet again, this is Reverend Harrison.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.